Rabban Yohanan ben Zakkai once told his students, go out and find the good path that a person should choose in their life. And his student Rabbi Yosei responded with this answer, Shachen Tov, a good neighbor. In Perashat Bemidbar, we read about the tribes and how they camped in the desert, and each tribe had its neighbors. The 12 tribes were split into 4 camps, each 3 tribes surrounding the Mishkan in the center. And the question is, what happens after 40 years in the desert of the tribes being together? They experience things together, they grow together, they have their ups and downs, and then finally, in the days of Yoshua, when they enter the land of Israel, do the neighbors stay together when they receive their portions? So let's take a look at the different mahanot. We'll start with Ephraim, Menashe, and Binyamin. So in this Mahane of Ephraim, we see that when they enter Israel, they still stay neighbors. We have Binyamin and Ephraim and Menashe all together. Life is good. If you look behind me, actually, you'll see there are the mountains of Ephraim, and a little to the south, those are the mountains of Binyamin. Everything is great. If we look in the other Mahanot, however, we'll see that there's a little bit of a split. For example, in Mahane Dan, with Naphtali and Asher, when they enter Israel, Asher and Naphtali end up here in the north of Israel, but Dan is separate down in the south by the coast. We look at Reuben, Gad, and Shimon. So Reuben and Gad are together here on the other side of the Jordan, where they get their portion in the days of Moshe. But Shimon is here down in the Negev inside the tribe of Yehuda. And Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zebulun also a split. The 2 of Yisachar and Zebulun are together here in Emek Yisrael in the lower Galilee, whereas Yehuda is down in the south. However, if we take a look a little bit further into the future, we see how the history unfolds. We'll see that in all cases where there was one tribe left out, there's a yearning, consciously or perhaps unconsciously, that pulls it back, and at some point a part will go to live with the other 2 neighbors from the desert. So we'll start by looking at Dan. That story is told in Sefer Shofetim about 600 men from Dan who go and they look to find a new place to live because they didn't have enough room, and they end up in the north of Israel. And it was the area that says Ba'aretz Rahabat Yadayim, plenty of room, Shoket Boteach, and that was all the way up here, the city that they call Dan, next to Naphtali and Asher, so they're back together. We look in Sefer Divrei Yamim, we have a similar thing happening with Shimon. Shimon was here, but in the days of Hizkiyahu, it says that 500 men head out, they're looking for a place for pasture for their animals. And they're shepherds, they raise animals just like their brothers in Reuben and Gad back from the desert, and they end up going to the area of Edom, Har Seir. And the language there is also very similar to the story of Dan. They find an area, Ba'aretz Rahabat Yadayim, there's plenty of room, Shoketet Ushleva, it's quiet and peaceful. So that's Shimon also finds his neighbors. What about Yehuda? With Yehuda, the interesting thing is that actually, from the very beginning, there was an enclave of Yehuda that was next to Yisachar and Zebulun, and that was here, at the very north of the Nahala of Menashe, in a place called Havot Yair. Who is this Yair? So Yair we read about in Perashat Matot. It says that Yair ben Menashe went out and he conquered, and he named the area Havot Yair. But Ibn Ezra and Ramban both point out that this Yair actually, even though it says Ben Menashe, he was really, according to his father, from the tribe of Yehuda. And they point to this family tree based on Divrei Yamim, where it says that Yair, even though he traces his lineage back to Yehuda, his grandmother, Abiyah, was from the tribe of Menashe. So that's why it's called Yair ben Menashe, because he went to live with his cousins from Menashe, even though he was really a descendant of Yehuda. There's 3 places in Tanakh where it's hinted to that this area of the country was really an enclave of Yehuda within Menashe. First, we have in Sefer Shofetim, in Shirat Devorah, it says, Mini Machir Yaredu Mechokekim. From Machir descended Mechokekim. What are Mechokekim? They are lawmakers. But that's the hallmark of Yehuda. It says in the Torah, for example, Lo Yasur Shevet Mihuda Umchokek Mi Ben Raglav. Also in Tehillim, we have Yehuda Mechokeki. But if we understand the family tree of Yair, who was a descendant of this Machir, the son of Menashe, we understand how from Machir descended Mechokekim, because Machir descendants were also from the tribe of Yehuda. The next hint is in Melachim. So for Melachim, it talks about in the days of Yerovam ben Yoash, how he expanded the borders in the north. He took from Aram territory and returned it to Yehuda b'Yisrael. He returned territory to the tribe of Yehuda, which lived here around the area of the Golan Heights, the very north of Menashe, and areas of Damascus were returned to Yehuda. And finally, the last one is in Sefer Yoshua. In Sefer Yoshua, when describing the borders of Naphtali, it says curiously that Naphtali bordered Yehuda to the east across the Yarden. Well, if we look at the map and we understand that Yehuda was here, we'll see how they're right across the Yarden from Naphtali. Let's go to this point right here to take a look and see how it all fits together. I'm standing here in the southern Golan Heights looking across at where the eastern border of Nahalat Yisachar is. Here is the Kinneret, on the other side is Nahalat Naphtali. In Sefer Yoshua it says Naphtali bordered Yehuda to the southeast. So Yehuda is here. This is the area known in the Torah as Havot Yair, and it borders Yisachar on the other side and continuing to Zebulun, thus filling the connection of Yisachar Zebulun with Yehuda, just like in the Midbar. So what we see from the unraveling of this story that starts in Perashat Bemidbar is that as the tribes move into the land of Israel and each inherits its own portion, which symbolizes a maturity and sort of independence, each tribe has its own destiny. Each tribe finds its own way and its own place, but at the same time, something that guides us in life is a sort of pull towards our roots, towards the friends and neighbors of our youth, represented by the neighboring tribes in the desert. It's true about life, it's true about living in Israel, and that's part of our story. It's part of the story of Yisrael.